On this car we fitted new brake pads and discs. When you're fitting the brake pads into the carrier, you must make sure that these slider mounts are clean on both sides. These are the shims for the pads. The pads slide in here, and you need to clean the back and the front, otherwise you get a build up and it pushes these up or down and it'll jam the brake pad in. As you can see on this, it needs to be clean, this space. So this one's been cleaned on the back and the front, and you need to clean the carrier as well to make sure that's clean, get all the rust and debris off it. As you can see, the top's clean as well, and the surface, so the pads slide equally. Otherwise it'll make the pads tight and they'll jam as they're trying to move in. That'll lift up and jam the brake pad in here. You must do the same behind the disc. You must clean this face. You don't want rust behind it because it'll tilt the disc and cause a warp. You need to clean the face of the hub behind it. This is the discs off the car that we've just been looking at. There's quite a lip on the inside and outside of a wear lip. As I was saying about cleaning the hub, which is behind the disc here, you can see the build-up of rust. You need to make sure the hub face is clean so the disc sits flat against the hub, so it's keeping the brake straight. This is a new disc. This isn't the same one as that. This is for a different car because that's already on the car. But just to show you the principle, when you get a new brake disc like this, it's got grease on it, like oil, to protect it from getting corroded in the factory while it's in the warehouse and everything. So you need to clean the face of the brake disc off, both sides, and get the protection, the oil protection off them. This is a new brake pad. As you can see, what's worn down compared to an old one. You'll get a wear indicator. Yeah, this has got a wear indicator on this. So as this brake pad wears down, as you can see, that one's worn down, and that has hit the wear limit, which then, as that's running on the brake disc, like that, you'll get, if I can get it to do it, you get a high scream. And that's what you'll hear when you're driving, when you're braking. A scratching sound, which is that. You can tell that it's clean, that it's been touching the surface of the disc. So when that wears down, the brake pad, you can see, as the pad wears, it will touch that and that'll start to scream, and you've got approximately 2 mil left on that when it wears down, which will give you time to get to a garage and, you know, even wait a week. The noise will probably annoy you, but you'll have time to get them done before it's, you know, dangerous and you've worn out. Got some paint thinners here. A lot of people use brake cleaner. As long as it breaks the oil off, that's fine. When you're fitting the new disc and pads, a lot of the new pads now will come with a screech pad on the back, so you don't generally have to put any copper grease on the back, but I tend to put a little bit on the carrier here, on the guides. You don't want to brush that way against the pad, because, for example, if I do that, I'm going to leave a big lump of grease on the inside. And when the brake pad wears down, that will get on the disc, and you do not want grease on your brake discs. So I'll brush from that direction. And just put it on the edge, just to help it slide. Stops the rust building up on it. As you can see, they were getting very rusty then. When they get rusty, they start to jam in the sliders. I don't know whether you can see on that. The brake pad is thicker here than here because the pad's been pitching on an angle with getting jammed. So I'm going to be changing brake pads and discs on this car. I'm just going to go through what you should do. We've already took the wheel off. You can hear on this car, there's a screech pad here, this piece of metal, and you can hear it when you turn it. Okay, that's the noise it'll make. Already took the covers off these Allen keys. Have a little dust cover over them. You have to push the slide pins back out the way. You can see they gather quite a lot of dust on the top there. On that pin there. So I'm just going to push that back in. Out the way. So take the little cap off. Just going to lever the brake caliper out a little bit. I'm just going to pull on it so that it opens the piston slightly, just give me a little bit of wiggle room. Wow. As you can see on this car, this brake pad, which had a small amount left on it, and it was down to the screech indicator, compared to this pad, which doesn't have a screech indicator, which has actually worn the pad right off and is on the backing plate, which has been rubbing on the disc. So they're completely worn out then. The discs are the same, there's quite a lip on the disc on this side, and that side's got a bit of damage off the brake pad, where the brake pad's been rubbing on the inside. So we'll be changing the pads and discs on this car. Okay, I'm going to take the caliper carrier off. So that's the brake pad and caliper carrier. The bolts that hold these on will generally be tight because they'll have a lock thread on. These have been quite rusty, these at the back, and that's why they're a bit awkward to get out. You can see the rust build up in these. You can actually see where the brake pad was sitting as it's worn right down. So that would have been right in, whereas it should be back here. And as it's worn, it's come further in and it's been stuck there. Right, you must clean these grooves properly so the pad can move in and out smooth. Right, I'm going to take the disc off. Take out the grub screw. Generally the disc won't come off that easy, you might have to tap it. Make sure you wear goggles, because more mechanics lose eyesight by hitting these with a hammer, and a piece of the disc will come off and hit in the eye. So if you're going to hit it with anything, make sure you wear goggles. So you can see the inside of the disc, a lot of rust is built up inside here on the face, and this hub. When you get a build up of rust, it'll pitch the disc on an angle. So you need to make sure this is clean before it all goes back together. I'm going to use a drill with a small wire brush just to clean this face. Clean this rim as well, where your wheel sits and the disc, because we had a job getting the wheel off this car because this was very corroded and the wheel was stuck to it. So I'm just going to clean this rim as well. So I'm just going to clean the brake carrier now, the pad carrier. So you can see the difference. You get like a thick build up here. You can see it, I don't scrape it at all, but it's really heavy rust. See the pieces chip off. Gotta clean it good. So what I'll do, just to stop a build up, I'll put some copper grease on this. Give it a coating of grease to stop a build up of rust getting behind this, the disc here. Now the new disc can go on. Need to locate it with the screw hole, the grub screw. That's the disc on. Now we need to push the piston back and take the slider pins out, or bolts, whatever you want to call them. As you can see, they build up a lot of rust here and debris, which stops the caliper sliding backward and forth. That's supposed to slide nice and easy, this caliper, on them. But if you get a lot of build up like that, it just jams them up. Some people don't clean these up properly. They should be cleaned all the time. So I'm going to push the piston back. Just going to use an old brake pad. Put that in there. You can get special tools to put them back, and I just use an old G-clamp. Just gently, just push it back. You can see the piston is fully back now. Just going to clean these pins. Look nice and clean. So I'm going to put the caliper carrier back on, and I'm going to put some lock thread on the bolts. You don't want these coming loose. If you take a bolt out and you see it's had lock thread on it, always put new lock thread on. You might see blue or red on the thread. This had a bit of blue, so. Make sure you put both bolts in before you tighten any up. Just so you've got a little bit of movement to guide the bolt in the right place. Before I put the pads in, I generally pour a dot of oil on these. Don't want a lot. Just a dot. If you put grease on them, you'll get a lot of dust getting caught in the grease and staying there. I'm just putting this on to help it while it's in the rubbers, to slide in and out better. Don't put it on the thread. These type of slider bolts tend to take the thread out of the carrier, so do not over tighten them. On this car, this brake pad fits in here in the caliper first. You can see the tripod. And the second pad goes on the outside here. Slots in, located. And you can bring your caliper back in and just slide it on. You see, when you tighten these slider pins, do not tighten them heavily. Just give them a nip. You can always consult your owner's manual for the torque setting. And you've got two dust caps to go back. And I've got one last job, which is the pin. You'll find these jam sometimes in these holes, which can be a bit of a nuisance. So I'm going to clean these a little bit. I'll put a little dot of grease on these just to stop them seizing into the hole. I'll put one in first. Now these lock around the back of that. I'm just going to try and get them both in first. And just lever them over. Like that. And just tap these in. Just make sure they're home properly. And that's it. Just make sure these are around the back, clipped in properly. All brakes are different on all cars, but that's generally the basic idea. Now I just need to clean this brake disc off because I've had my hands on it. And then that one's good. And what I suggest is always pump the brake pedal up. So after you've done one side, pump the brake pedal up, because you'll find if you just push both calipers back, your brake fluid will overflow because you're putting new pads in and you're pushing the calipers right back. So once I've done this and I've cleaned it, I'll pump the brake pedal up and then I'll proceed on the other side. Clean the front and the back of the disc because you've had your hands on it. Get all the greasy prints off. And if you don't pump your brake up, there's a gap here because you've pushed the caliper back. So if you didn't pump your brake and you got in your car and you just went to drive, you'd have no brakes. So I'll just show you now. I'm going to pump the brake and you'll see it close the gap. That should be closed now. And you can just see there's no play now. The pads have closed up onto the disc, which is what you want. Just have a check around, make sure you put everything back. All your bolts are tight. You put a little clip back on this wire. And there's no grease on your disc. Ready to put the wheel back on. I wouldn't recommend doing this on a small jack, what you get with your car. It can be a bit unsafe because you're moving things around. They're not made to be taking that sort of stress. The little side jacks, I've got a proper jack and an axle stand underneath the car just for safety. Because even the big hydraulic jacks can collapse in a second. If they burst, the jack will just drop straight away, so always use an axle stand as well. So one thing, if you fit new brakes, they're going to be a bit soft for a couple of days. You need to give them time to bed in. Try not to do any harsh braking, like slamming on and driving fast and braking. If you can, give yourself a little bit of space between the car and front, a little bit more than what you normally would. And just test your brakes as you're going down the road slowly, because you need to bed them in. If you have to slam on, slam on. But generally, just take easy on the brakes for a few days, because they will take time to get hard new brakes.